All righty. Well, thank you, everybody. Happy spring and good afternoon. For those of you who don't know, I'm Rich Madalino. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the county, and I'm here to say, well, thank you. And that person who started off by cheering was Kathleen Connor, who's representing Jamie Raskin, our congressman, today at the forum. So, it's so exciting to be in this room together. It's been a long time since we've been able to do that, and thank you so much for getting us to this point and for joining us today, and let's give everyone a round of applause for being here. So, you know, it's frustrating with BA2 that we still have some masks on today, but thank you all for those of you who are wearing the masks, and we have plenty of room to spread out if you feel more comfortable taking one of these seats. It means so much to me and the county executive and the whole leadership team to be able to look out and see all of you and to be here in real life, in person, to have finally one of these meetings as opposed to doing this through a computer screen. There's been a lot of turnover since the last time we had one of these meetings, so when it's over, you might take an opportunity to meet some of the new people who have joined us with county government or become part of the management leadership service. I want to take this opportunity to let you know we're also joined today not only by County Executive Mark Eldridge, but by County Council President Gabe Albernos. So I think when you hear from Gabe and I were talking about this, he is the only person in county history who is a member of the Management Leadership Service and an attendee of QLF to then become a county council member. So it's historic that he's here. So we, of course, want to recognize some of the people who are retiring. Believe it or not, we have 8 people who will be retiring after many years of service, from 26 years to 19 years. We're going to be sending out information about everyone who's departing, but the longest serving person who's leaving as the Manager of Trauma Services, Nadia Cabello in HHS. Nadia, are you here? After she's retiring, Raymond, I know she's retiring after 38 years with the county government. So we greatly appreciate everything that she's done. And anyone else who's planning to retire, if you want to, or is on that list, if you want to stand up and be recognized and wave, here's your chance. You don't have to. We're going to send out the email. We have 15 new employees who were promoted to MLS positions. If you're in the room today, please stand up so that we can recognize and congratulate you on your promotion and your continued service to Montgomery County. Talia Parker, are you in the room? All right, there she is. So that's someone who's joined the CEX. So I just wanted to make sure someone stood up so that you could see. So, and then we have 2 new people who have joined us from outside of county government in the MLS. And I wanted to especially welcome Cicero Salas. Cicero is going to be working on East County and White Oak economic development. So if you have a question about economic development in the White Oak region and the East County region, you don't have to just go to JRU any longer. You can also go to Cicero, who's joining us after a distinguished career in planning for both Montgomery County and Prince George's County, and I think various governments in Brazil. So it's very interesting bio. Get to know Cicero. So now I have the honor to introduce our County Council President, Gabe Albernos. As many of you know, Gabe is completing his first term on the County Council. He's amongst one of the few people in their first term of office to actually be Council President for a year. Gabe grew up in Montgomery County. Gabe lives with his family in the Kensington area of the county. And as some of you know, maybe everyone knows, in the Leggett administration, he was the director of the Department of Recreation. So Robin Riley has had to do a lot to clean up. Oh, no, did I say that? But he set an excellent standard for the people of our county, the employees of Recreation, the Department of Recreation, and all of us who have the honor to be part of the Management Leadership Service. So now it's my honor to introduce Gabe Albernos, our County Council President.
Buenas tardes. It is such an honor and privilege to be with all of you this afternoon. And I'm having major flashbacks at the moment. But on behalf of the entire council, I am here to express our deepest appreciation to all of you for your public service. And I'm the warm-up act today. I'm the Jefferson Starship to the county executive's Rolling Stones, so I will not speak as long. But I do want to begin by sharing a story that's a little dated, but I think relevant to where we are right now as a community and as a society. On March 15th, 2009 was the worst day of my professional career. Many of you in this room were working in county government at that time, and as you'll recall, the county executive released his budget that afternoon rather than that morning because we needed the time to share the terrible news with hundreds of county employees that they were going to be losing their jobs because of a reduction in force process. And the Department of Human Resources gave department heads the option of having them deliver the news or us deliver the news. And so I, of course, chose to deliver the news to the 49 people that I was going to have to let know later that morning that they were going to be losing their jobs. And from 8 o'clock in the morning until 12 in the afternoon, every half an hour, a different classification of position would come before us, and I delivered the awful news, which was that through no fault of their own, they were losing their jobs. It was an awful day, but even more so for the people that were on the receiving end of that information, of course. That afternoon, I was broken. I was exhausted, I was tired, I was emotionally spent, and I thought about quitting my job. In fact, I've never told anybody this before, but I actually wrote a letter that I intended to submit the next day to Tim Firestein and Ike Leggett, tendering my resignation as the director of the department. But that afternoon, our youth development team encouraged me to come to an event that they had produced at the Holiday Park Senior Center. And it was an event in partnership with students from Blair High School, Einstein, and Wheaton. And it was a senior prom. It was a dance. And I didn't want to go, I was tired, I just wanted to get home. But Holiday Park was on the way home, and so I figured I'd stop by. And I got there late as the event was wrapping up, and I was introduced as the director of the department. And as I was leaving, a woman came up to me with tears in her eyes, and I thought something was wrong. And she said, "No, nothing's wrong. I just want to thank you." And I said, "For what?" And she said, "My husband used to love to dance, and that was the first time I've danced since he passed away more than 6 years ago. And I haven't had this much fun since he passed away." And in that moment, I realized so quickly the power and the importance of public service. And I share that story for two reasons. One, I can only imagine over these last 3 years that in dark moments, each of you were probably questioning your jobs and whether or not you wanted to continue in them. As the weight of the pandemic and the true fact that lives were on the line based on our work and processing that and how difficult that was while dealing with your own family challenges and shifting government from an in-person operation to an entirely virtual one, developing new systems on the fly must have been and continue to be overwhelming. But I'm here to thank you for staying the course, for choosing the noble profession of public service. You are meeting your destiny in ensuring that we carry forward the legacies of generations before us in the pursuit of the common good. We work for Montgomery County, Maryland. We should all stand tall. We should all lift our heads high, because in Montgomery County, success is the floor and excellence is the expectation. And our work matters. It matters to the resident who is counting on the bus arriving on time to get them to work or to get them to the job that will help lift their family out of poverty. It matters to the inmate at Clarksburg, who, through the support of the staff, is getting the GED that's going to help lift them up when they finish their term incarcerated to be able to get a job. It matters to the hundreds of thousands of county residents that received food assistance, rental relief, and a myriad of other services that helped keep them afloat during the pandemic. And it matters to the woman that I met 14 years ago who helped reinstate my belief in public service, that we created a moment in time for us to have some fun, for her own health and wellness. This work has never mattered than it does right now. And so I want to thank you for choosing the profession of public service, for choosing to work here in Montgomery County. My colleagues and I remain totally and completely committed to supporting you in all of your efforts and in all of your work. And I know that it's frustrating that you get all A's and one C, and the one bus that didn't arrive on time gets a call from a council member, and the pelotudo caracho calls us and says, I got all A's and one C. Why are we just focusing on the one C? And I know that feeling. I've been in those shoes. But again, success is the floor here in Montgomery County, and excellence is the expectation. So, in conclusion, I just want to let you all know that there are countless numbers of people in our community whom you will never meet and never get to know, but whose lives very much depend on your work and your commitment and the path that you have chosen professionally, which continues to be such a noble one. So thank you all very, very, very much. Please give yourselves a round of applause. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce the Rolling Stone of today's afternoon act, our County Executive, Mark Eldridge. As you all know, Mark has dedicated his career to public service. And from his days as an elementary school teacher to his time on the Tacoma Park City Council, which I had the chance to speak to last night, to his time on the County Council, what we've all known about Mark is what you see is what you get. Somebody who is deeply and totally dedicated to making sure that we raise all boats, to making sure that we build bridges among different communities across Montgomery County, and understands the very basic notion that we all succeed when we all succeed. Mark has had an extraordinarily difficult tenure as county executive, as all leaders have these last 4 years. But I know how proud he is of all of you because I get the chance to talk to him every week now as council president. And we always begin those conversations with him acknowledging or recognizing your work. We are on the same team. The council and the executive branch, working with our colleagues in the General Assembly and in the federal level. Although sometimes we point fingers, the practical reality is that we are all on the same team and we deeply respect each other's work. And I deeply respect his. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure and it is truly an honor to introduce our county executive, Mr. Mark Eldridge.
I have to get a podium with a flat deck on it so I can keep the water up here. I just, thank you, Gabe, for that introduction. It really means a lot to hear that from you. And I want to tell all of you that this has been a really difficult 3 years. There's no mistaking that. But when I go out in public, and it happened again today, and people see me and they thank me, and I remind them, when you're thanking me, you're thanking actually all of you and all the people that work in your departments. No one person does this. And certainly people who give direction don't do it. This is done by the people who go out every day and perform the jobs, whether it's driving the buses, seeing patients. Those are the folks who have to be out there and doing this work. And the continuity that we were able to provide through the pandemic, the fact that we just didn't shut down and say we can't possibly operate, that we made a decision in a matter of like a couple of days to pivot to teleworking and keep as much open as we possibly could. Those decisions were really important, not just for the organization, but they were important for people in the community. And so what you did made Montgomery County as successful as it was. And you need to take that message back to everybody who works in your departments, that they understand that your success was everybody's success. And when I get thanked, they're thanking you. And I recognize that. My head is not swollen by that. I understand the piece I played in this, but I was not the director of the show. And that goes to all of you and the people who do the work at the most closest level to people in the community. So I just want to thank you for that. It really is, I cannot tell you how much our residents appreciate you. If you don't see it, I maybe get recognized more than you do on the street. But if you don't see it, you need to know that people really do believe that what you did was rather remarkable. So I just want to thank you for that. It's wonderful to see everybody in person. And, I delivered last year's State of the County via video, and as a former classroom teacher like me, it's just not the same. I'm used to going desk to desk, looking at the work. So it's very important for us to be able to gather again. And I will correct one thing. If I'm anybody, it's not the Rolling Stones. I like the Rolling Stones, but the person who captures America and both the hope and the angst of America is Bruce Springsteen. And so from the moment I read his Time magazine interview, where he talked about the Vietnam War and civil rights, and I'm thinking, finally a rock star opens his mouth and I'm not embarrassed. That's the person that is my model. Stones are good. Over the past year, we've been slowly getting back to normal, and although sometimes we take a step backward before we can take 2 steps forward, such as with the recent Omicron surge, it's incredible to reflect on what we've all been through in the past 2 years, but with an awareness that this fight isn't over. And I'd like to view the pandemic through my grandchildren's eyes. This pandemic robbed them and their generation of years that are crucial to their growth and education. For little kids attending daycare, to young adults in college or just starting their careers, all our young people, including my grandchildren, this pandemic has been deeply significant. And we can see their struggles, but we should also be in awe of how they continue to adapt and persevere and demonstrate the best qualities among us. My kids were traumatized by this. They were affected by this, my grandkids. But they went out and participated in food drives and clothing drives and all these things because despite everything we're feeling and experiencing, they know they're in a better position than other people are, and they want to help. And there are so many people in this community who want to help. We could spend all day thanking every nonprofit, church, and social organization who did this work and worked with us to make sure things got delivered. So the state of Montgomery County in 2022 very much reflects all of this. The challenges and obstacles of the past 2 years have not and will not stop our progress, our compassion for one another, and our hope for better tomorrows. The state of the county in 2022 can be defined by the achievements of our neighbors. 9-year-old Kavanaugh Bell, who during the pandemic used his savings to make care packs for senior citizens. And then when he ran out of money, he turned to social media and created a food pantry. Rockville High School graduate and mechanical engineer Tareen Bailey, who was on the NASA team that made the first helicopter flight on Mars. And brothers Harun, Idris, and Yahya Tarzada, I always get his last name wrong, who founded Truebill, a financial tracking app. They moved Truebill from San Francisco to Silver Spring in 2020. And last December, sold their app to rocket companies for $1.3 billion. Then there's Treasurer Nancy Kopp, who recently retired after decades of service to the state of Maryland and Montgomery County, and she served with grace and honesty while remaining true to her convictions and standing up to powerful special interests on behalf of the voiceless. And she was our champion when we were dealing with I-270 and 495. She was the one person who stood with us there. I want to thank Dr. Gales, who, served as our county health officer and recently received the American Medical Association's award for outstanding government service, while also facing hateful, racist, and homophobic vitriol. He served our county every day and led us to be one of the safest places in the country. And I still cannot wrap my head around the people who attacked the person who did everything he could do to keep us safe and stayed on that job in spite of the insults and attacks. It's a sad commentary on the life of racism in this county, but in this country as well. But it's also a tribute to his courage to be willing to stand up and do that, because his job was to make sure we made the decisions that kept everybody safe. Sadly, we have to acknowledge some of our community icons who departed us over the past year, and whose legacies and influence will always be remembered and appreciated by the county. There's former county council member, Chevy Chase mayor, and a persistent environmental protector and champion, Scott Fossler. There's Montgomery County Human Rights Hall of Fame member, crime victim advocate, and a pillar in our Latino community, worked for the Montgomery County Police Department, Blanca King, known affectionately as Blanquita. There's Rockville resident and president of the AFL-CIO for nearly 12 years, Richard Trumka, a fighter and protector of working men and women across the globe. And there's the founder of the Montgomery County Muslim Foundation and Roscoe Nix Distinguished Community Leadership Award recipient, Tufail Ahmad. Tufail was a trailblazer for the local Muslim community. I ran against him in 2002. He's one of the myriad number of county council candidates. And we got to be friends out of that experience, because we mostly would agree with each other during the campaign. That's a good thing to do when you have 4 open seats. But he was really, he meant a lot, because he helped bring the Muslim community and connect it into the mainstream of this county. And that's important for everybody to see how much alike we all are, rather than people who focus on the differences. And we lost longtime Board of Education member Pat O'Neill. Her love of children was only matched by her commitment to constituents that she served for nearly a quarter of a century. There's former Tuskegee Airman and national hero Charles McGee. Just a few weeks ago, I was honored to join Councilmember Will Jawando in announcing that our Silver Spring Library will now be renamed in his honor, and soon we will have a memorial placed over there commemorating that. And just last week, Montgomery County civil rights champion and community activist William Harvey Ziegler passed. Last year, I was so proud and honored to rename the County Executive's Humanitarian Award after him and his sister, Inez Ziegler Maccabee. Harvey was a real champion. He labored in the civil rights field in this county for decades, decades and decades. When you get to be 100 years old, you can talk about a lot of decades. And he was always committed to this county and to social justice in this county. The state of our county is reflected in how we are there for each other during our toughest times and in our worst moments. And over the past year, there were 3 significant incidents that demonstrated the character and resolve of our county residents. Last September at Rock Creek Woods Apartments in Rockville, a torrential downpour in the middle of the night gave residents little time to escape. And after an incredible response and search and rescue operation of our fire and rescue services, sadly, 1 man lost his life. But in the aftermath of that, our Department of Environment is continuing to review this incident, as well as identifying other places that may be susceptible to this kind of flooding and planning to remediate those conditions. This past January at Mcgregor High School, this county experienced its first shooting incident inside one of our school buildings, when 1 student shot another with an unregistered ghost gun. The suspect bought online and built himself. And I gotta say this, if you buy a regular gun, you have to get it registered and you have to get it from a firearms shop. The idea that you can buy a disassembled gun with the same capacity and firepower of an assembled gun and follow a video and assemble that gun on a kitchen table, and that is not treated the same as any other gun, is beyond me. Whether you're a hobbyist or whether you have other intent, those guns need to go through the very same process, because they have the very same deadly effect as any other gun has. But I want to say that following this incident, our community and the Mcgregor community was there to welcome the students back. They came together, showed them that they were loved and cared for, and we immediately turned this tragedy into action by advocating and helping the Maryland General Assembly pass a ban on these ghost guns. And just last month, a deadly explosion at Friendly Garden Apartments in Silver Spring miraculously did not kill anyone, but displaced more than 150 residents. Food and housing assistance to help these residents immediately poured in, and I'm proud to announce that in just over a month and a half, they've exceeded $600,000 in donations from this community to help these families out. The state of our county is measured by our compassion and humanity and how we are protecting the health and safety of our residents, providing support for the most vulnerable, educating our children, and protecting our environment. Our successes have made international news, achieved unprecedented accomplishments, set county records, and established clear goals for a better future. During last year's State of the County address, I remarked about our initial rollout and limited supply of the vaccine that was in great demand. What a difference a year makes. We're trying to get people to take vaccines now. If you're not boosted, and I hope everybody in this room is, but if you're not, you should get boosted. You know, the medical evidence says that the effectiveness of your original shots wanes. The more it wanes, the more you're susceptible, not just to getting infected. I had COVID. I did not have the worst case of COVID. But if I hadn't been boosted, I might have gotten a very different case of COVID. And it's important for people to get vaccinated. If you've got friends and loved ones who are hesitant and you've survived it and you can say, look, I've been vaccinated, I'm okay, tell them that they're going to be okay. We don't want to lose any more people. We've reached the point with COVID where truly nobody really needs to die. Think about that. Nobody needs to die. And so when the scientific community comes forward and says, we've got a fix and we can keep people from dying, please take the advice. You will leave somebody behind who will miss you, and that doesn't have to happen. This county achieved the highest rate of vaccination in the nation, and we did it equitably. These successes are the reason that our death rate is 2/3 of the national average. If the rest of the nation had been just like Montgomery County, 300,000 more Americans would be alive today. Think about that. That's a lot of people. This achievement was possible because of you, our employees, and our residents. It brings me great joy to announce that starting this year, this county will no longer be sheltering our homeless just a few months per year. This has always been one of the sorriest stories in Montgomery County, that we've tolerated people sleeping outside for most of the year and kicking them out in the morning and letting them come back. Last month, we opened a brand new shelter that will be available year-round as compared to only in the colder months. Not only will the shelter house our homeless, but will allow us to engage each individual and find them more permanent housing, job opportunities, and mental health supports. This shelter houses 200 people in normal conditions and can surge up to 290. We have never been in this position before, and we did that in the middle of the pandemic. I want to thank David Dice and his folks who went from permit to occupancy between September and March. Rather remarkable job considering they gutted the entire building. Our world-class education system continues to be a main driver of why so many families and businesses want to be in the county. My recommended FY23 budget funds MCPS, Montgomery College, as well as our child care and after-school programs at record levels. And it begins the opening of a new Montgomery College campus on the east side of the county. And I know that J-Ro and everybody who works over there is really happy about this, but this campus has been desired for a long time. We're finally making it a reality, and it is truly a step toward more equitable education opportunities in this county. And I'm really glad we're able to do this, and Montgomery College worked with us to get this done. And we have a climate plan that's caught the attention of leaders from Annapolis to the White House and among policy experts around the nation. Our plan is one of the most aggressive in the nation, with a clear goal of reducing 100% of greenhouse gases by 20 2035. This will not be the easiest thing we've ever done, but it may be the most necessary thing that we have to do. After putting COVID into a place where it can be managed, dealing with climate is the existential threat to the society and the world, and we have to take it on seriously. Today, I'm proud to announce that the state of the county in 2022 is robust and continues to be resilient, innovative, and equitable, while also creating more opportunities for our residents than ever before. After over 2 years of operating in crisis mode in response to the pandemic, nearly 15 years since the beginning of the Great Recession, you know county services never fully recovered from the Great Recession. And for the first time since I've been a county official, our revenues have returned stronger than even we predicted, and we finally have surpluses. Surpluses. It's a new concept for us. This is a long way from just 3 years ago when I inherited a $90 million deficit in my first budget. On my second day, the people from the finance office came down and said, oh, by the way, there's a $45 million shortfall in current revenues, and you have to make $45 million in cuts. You have no idea how painful it is to sit with a list of programs that are scheduled to run through June and to have to make $45 million cuts out of those programs, only to be told in March, before we brought our budget over to the council by the state, that you have another $50 million shortfall in your anticipated revenues, and so I got to make another $50 million in cuts. This was a painful and difficult process, not something I ever imagined I would have to do, but it was something we needed to do. My first budget was very difficult. My second budget was presented to the council on the day we shut down for COVID. The council decided we were going to do a same services budget. We didn't look at the new budget at all, and we basically preserved services from the previous year. And last year's budget was also charmingly difficult. Like everybody else across the country, we relied on federal funds to balance that budget. All of us had lost revenues. We needed the support from the federal government. A minor miracle in the South actually made that possible. And we were able to get federal money that helped us balance that budget, but we could not build a budget with new programs based on federal money because you don't know whether that money is going to be there next year. So it limited expansion without knowing whether or not the revenues would be there. Because of the investments we've made in our community and the charter change that I, along with many county and community leaders, championed in 2020, the county's fiscal picture has drastically improved. This budget makes significant community investments while also, for the first time, meeting the county's 10% reserve target. All of you heard the reserves. You've got to meet the reserves. We did it. It's in our budget, and we did it in the middle of the pandemic. And although we're not used to seeing a budget this good, we have every reason to be optimistic for continued better days ahead. After years of stagnant job growth, our life sciences industry is booming. Our county is quickly growing as a national epicenter for this industry. Life science companies have always been here. Sadly, it took a pandemic to realize how important they are. Our region is the third fastest growing life sciences market, and we're the fourth largest biocluster in the nation, and my goal is to make us number one. We can do this. We are working in White Flint with WMATA to do a joint development agreement to make White Flint a center of life sciences in Montgomery County to complement what we have in the life sciences cluster at Shady Grove. And we're working with the University of Maryland to bring an educational program in computing sciences that will be working with both the hospitality industry and, most importantly, with life sciences to advance their work from simply wet labs, but to marry the wet labs with the computers so they can make further and more rapid advances in the sciences. This is important, and this only comes, it took 2 years to get both these agreements. If you think you can just declare you want something and somebody is going to hand it to you, it does not happen that way in the real world. You have to work at it, and we worked at it. And we're seeing a rebound for our hospitality companies as travel returns. And I'm sure all of you are traveling now. At least most of the people I know are traveling now. Every budget and finance expert in our government and at the state level are confident that this funding will be sustainable. This means that the state of our county is stronger than ever. Out of more than 3,000 counties, we are one of approximately 50 counties with a AAA bond rating from all three credit agencies. We're among the few jurisdictions to achieve this mark of financial stability for more than 3 decades. And that's a tribute to consistent financial stewardship, smart choices, and wise investments. For too long, our county government has fallen behind on wages, making it more difficult to compete for talent. And I think anybody who runs a department sees this. I'm proud that in my 23 budget, we are addressing this problem, and I'm recommending raises that are fairer and will make us more competitive. And I hope that helps you in your recruitment and retention. And we're going to attract diverse talent by making this place a more innovative place that provides opportunity for creativity, and we're going to embrace teleworking. We made this pivot to teleworking due to the pandemic, and it's worked, and it's here to stay. We didn't know. We didn't know if teleworking was going to work, because we had teleworking policies that we actually never implemented. We didn't know how this was going to go, and we went from very limited teleworking to doing this at a massive scale. The people in this county are amazing. The workforce we have is amazing. You all pivoted and were able to keep doing what we needed to be done. And I just got to thank you again for that. That is really important to the county to be able to do that, and it's going to help us moving forward. And the strength of the county is reflected in the opinions and feedback that we get directly from our residents. Just last week, we announced our biennial resident survey. 86% of our residents surveyed rated the overall quality of life in Montgomery County as excellent or good. This is a 4% increase, a 4 percentage point increase since 2017. And 90% of our residents rated our county as an excellent or good place to live. And that's because of you. Our response to and recovery from this pandemic is not over. Despite plenty of good news, we can't disregard the thousands of our residents who are still struggling from the economic hardship, stress, and loss of loved ones and income due to the pandemic. There may be no greater long-term impact of the pandemic than the learning loss incurred by our students. I'm proud to have provided record funding to our schools, $117 million above maintenance of effort, and $147 million over last year's spend. You can't talk about a crisis in education and then not put the money there, the funds there needed to address it, and that's what we're doing, and hopefully the council will support this as they deliberate our budget. We invested $20 million in early child care and education initiatives and made enhancements to our after-school programs that will keep kids learning and provide mental health and wellness support as well. Our children have not been the only ones that have been impacted by the pandemic, quite frankly. There are few among us who've escaped the stress from this pandemic over the last 2 years. And if anybody has not felt any stress over the last 2 years, raise your hand. I want to talk to you and figure out what magical recipe you have for dealing with this. This is, in my life, is the most stressful thing I've ever had to deal with. My recommended budget adds funding to several fronts that engage and help every resident who may need assistance. We have $1 million to support the transition to the 988 3-digit dialing code to connect connect residents with suicide prevention and mental health crisis services. $800,000 to continue to address the call volume at Every Mind, the county's mental health hotline. Throughout our nation and our state and our region, we've seen the stress from this pandemic manifest itself into more incidents of crime and concerns over public safety. Montgomery County is no different. I am constantly distressed at the number of people who seem to be unglued. And you see it in lots of different places, and it's really hard to see because you know people feel a sense of hopelessness and don't know what to do. This is the outcome of that, and we are going to continue to work and have to do more if we're going to address this. We've fared much better in terms of our public safety numbers than many of our neighbors in peer jurisdictions around our nation. In our current resident survey results, 77% of respondents had a positive feeling in terms of feeling safe in our county, but this is a 7% drop compared to pre-pandemic levels. It's very concerning, and we're going about addressing this now. This is not something that we are going to delay on. 2 budget cycles ago, I proposed raising the salaries of our police officers because we were told point blank that our salaries were at the bottom, we were unable to recruit and retain people, and we needed to raise those salaries. We weren't successful in getting it through the council then, but we've resubmitted, we've negotiated another agreement with the union, we've resubmitted this to the council. I'm sure this is going to get passed because I think we globally recognize that if we're going to have the police force we want and retain it, we're going to have to pay them like we actually want them to stay here. And so, this budget recognizes that you need to pay for the talent you want to bring here in so many ways. At that time, the county council opted for the same services budget, and we're in a different situation now. I'm going to go over this. In our police department, we're not only going to enhance police recruitment and retention by strengthening the competitiveness of compensation, but we're also recommending expanding the police recruitment unit to attract the next generation of officers that will better reflect the diversity of our population. We should be able to draw more officers out of the Montgomery County community, and we're going to make an effort to do that. Our police force is also being improved by increasing accountability, transparency, community oversight process that were prescribed in last year's historic police reform laws that were passed by the General Assembly. We are all going to be able to live with this. It's not as scary as some people think, but it's important to improve public safety. We have to do more than address crime. In our fire and rescue services, we're making our response times quicker and more robust, expanding the mobile integrated health program to address the needs of frequent 911 callers, adding a paramedic chase car, and increasing staffing at the Sandy Spring Fire Station. We're also proposing $800,000 in the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security for nonprofit security grants for high-risk organizations at risk of experiencing hate crimes. We are the only local jurisdiction in our state and region that supports nonprofits in the faith community in this way, and this is important, and I'm glad we're the first. In the Department of Correction and Rehabilitation, we're addressing a major equity issue. We're eliminating the administrative fees to participate in court-related diversion programs, including the intervention program for substance abusers and alternative community service programs. Making those fees a barrier to a person participating in programs that will help them get back onto the street and do it in a healthy way, we should never have done that, and we are ending that now. We're also resurrecting the previously shut down bakery program, and I think if you're a long-term county employee, you may have experienced the joys of the bakery program. They were really good, and those people got jobs in the industry, and we're bringing that program back. And I'm very excited about our Restoration Center project. No longer should we be taking nonviolent offenders, especially those with substance abuse issues, and just locking them up in jail. It solves nothing. Nobody ever got better if they're an addict by spending a night in jail. This is and has been a recipe for disaster, as well as an inefficient way for us to spend taxpayer money. Our new Restoration Center will provide the county a specific facility for these individuals that can help them deal with their problems while getting them rehabilitated to re-enter society and reduce the chances of recidivism. We shouldn't make mental health issues a crime, and this is a step in that direction. I want to thank our county delegation who helped us fund this project. Our public safety efforts also involve continuing our reimagining public safety efforts that focus on prevention and stopping crimes before they even happen, because when our police, fire, and EMS and corrections department get involved, it's often very late in the process. Our public safety efforts cannot succeed without continued effort toward racial equity and social justice. In a few weeks, we'll get a report from our partners at Effective Law Enforcement for All, and they'll be providing specific recommendations to improve our training and engagement techniques, as well as increasing accountability. And I have to say, when you look at some of the incidents that happened, you realize people did exactly what was expected with them that led to endings that none of us wanted to happen. And we can do better. We can train people in a different way so things don't have to end the way we don't want them to end. Additionally, we're going to continue to ramp up our crisis intervention staff in HHS, social workers and psychologists in the school system, and increased funding to our community partners through grants. And something that's not in the budget, I've actually approached one of our hospitals to talk about what it would cost to reinstitute community mental health clinics. For you, again, if you're old enough to remember this in Montgomery County, we used to have them. And they were played a major role, because not every kid's going to go to a counselor in a school, and not every person who has a mental health crisis is a kid in school. And for those people who aren't, they have nowhere to go. And so we want to see what it would cost to stand up several of these facilities, but I think that's important. I want to thank and acknowledge all of our public safety partners, engaged citizens, businesses who come together to address these problems and concerns. And one of these examples of the collaborative effort is right here in Silver Spring. Over the past year, when we saw a significant rise in complaints and incidents that were impacting businesses and residents, we realized it's just not the responsibility of MCPD. This involves the entire county government, our permitting and inspections, HHS health inspectors, and our Silver Spring Regional Service Center. And by meeting and listening and engaging with the community, we're creating a better and safer Silver Spring right now. And we're not in this fight alone. I appreciate the work that's been done in Annapolis this session to ban ghost guns. The fact that these illegal guns was insane, and I'm just really happy. I talked about this before. I'm just excited that we actually got the ban through the legislature. And that won't stop the ability to purchase them, but hopefully it'll make it harder. You can skip down a little bit. I want to thank Chief Jones and State Attorney John McCarthy and Sheriff Popkin for the leadership, along with our state delegation that got this bill through. And if 77% of our residents feel safe in Montgomery County, it's our duty to ensure the remaining 23% come to feel equally safe. And we need to do that with a great sense of urgency. Finally, the resilience this county demonstrated over the past year is ingrained in government operations and our employees. It didn't take a pandemic for me to know that our county systems have not been able to address inequities in health outcomes, that our homeless residents need a shelter to go to every month, and that our rents are too damn high, and too many of our residents are food insecure. But it did take this pandemic, help from and investment from the state and Congress, and fortunately, a favorable budget that now allows us to take on these problems more seriously with a greater sense of urgency and with a greater ability to actually have an impact. It's great to want to do something, but when your checkbook is empty, there's not a lot you can do. When you have 3 budgets of austerity with no real increases, you can want everything in the world, you produce nothing. This budget allows us to start producing the things we want. One of the great lessons of the pandemic, and now embedded in our budget, is funding the hubs in our community. During the midst of the pandemic, people began standing out hubs. The first one that was up was in Germantown. We used that as a model. We realized that through the hubs, we could distribute and communicate with the community at a deeper level than we could do just from county government. Yes, county government occasionally has limitations. Yes, sometimes people in the community are the best ambassadors that we can have. And we made that pivot to the hubs. They help provide food, they help provide vaccines, tests. They allowed us to connect deeper in the community, and we learned from that. And because of that, these are going to continue to be in my budget. We're going to keep these efforts going forward. I've put $5.6 million in there for service consolidation hubs to assist our most vulnerable residents. Also, I'm also recommending $6.3 million in our budget for our African American Health Program, Latino Health Initiative, and Asian American Health Initiative. Again, organizations that did what we were not able to do and helped make us successful. And I want to thank Gabe and Nancy, both especially for bringing us Salute a Vienna Star, because I think that organization certainly played a pivotal role in addressing some of these issues in the Hispanic community. And I appreciated your introduction to them. I had a good meeting with them. We not only did that, but we took that model and then expanded it across all the other initiatives. It was a good moment for Montgomery County, and I think it's an object lesson that we actually are capable of learning here. We're not just bound. You can go a little bit further. Go ahead. Good. I want to thank, we're also creating an Office of Food System Resilience, enhanced grant funding for our food assistance programs, $4 million to continue to directly provide food to individuals and families most in need. We served, I think the number is over 40 million pounds of food and 27 million meals. That number is astounding. Members of SEIU and the school staff provided food throughout this when they weren't in school. The nonprofit community stepped up in spades. Businesses contributed, grocery stores contributed food and money to help make this possible. It is huge that we could serve those many meals. And the sad thing is that the people who are serving meals now are telling us that the lines are as long. The pandemic may have waned. A lot of people are still out of work. And if you look at the people who lost work, you can get a global number. You can say Montgomery County has achieved about 3.7% unemployment. It sounds really good. But when you break it down by job category, there are job categories where unemployment is between 10 and 15, 20%. And there are job categories where there's no unemployment. And so while the number overall looks good, there are a whole lot of people that have not seen a recovery of the part of the economy that they were embedded in. And that's why we're still seeing people in these lines. And we've got an obligation to make sure, pandemic or no pandemic, or partial pandemic, that people can get food. Our efforts to end homelessness is being boosted by $2 million, which will provide 120 rapid housing slots, as well as $3 million to increase maximum rental assistance for families in need. And we're recommending $600,000 to provide comprehensive health services to residents of the county in these year-round shelters. We're budgeting $1 million to create and staff a new adult protective services team to investigate cases of abuse of our older residents and vulnerable residents. It is a sad thing that the pandemic has actually created a rise in people trying to take advantage of the seniors in our community and vulnerable people, and we're going to make the investment to help further their protection. $1.1 million goes to increase the support for developmental disability supplement program, and $1.4 million for increases in the adult medical daycare supplement program. We're continuing one of the most successful anti-poverty programs. We implemented the Working Families Income Supplement as well. But as we face these new and evolving challenges due to the pandemic, we simultaneously have to continue our focus on problems that have plagued us for far too long. We have to do more substantial things to address climate change. We have to build and preserve established affordable housing units, and we have to create more jobs. If it weren't for the pandemic over the last 2 years, climate would have been the lead story, because there's not a single day when you get past the COVID studies and now the Ukraine war stories that the news on climate is bad and getting worse. Our plans and goals to do our part for climate is setting the bar for every county and city throughout this nation. We're taking the actions that are needed in introducing policies and making investments to utilize innovative solutions, not just giving the same old lip service, platitudes, and pandering to this existential problem. So last July, we launched the Climate Action Plan, the most aggressive plan for a jurisdiction our size, and I want to acknowledge and thank our Department of Environmental Protection Interim Director and our Chief Climate Change Officer, Adriana Hochberg, for her leadership, as well as the efforts of hundreds of our employees from the Department of Environmental Protection, as well as the Department of General Services and Transportation, and the other departments who have engaged in this, including MCPS now. And finally, our community advocates and the activists for all their collaboration and input into this plan. If we take the steps that are prescribed, we can reduce 100% of our greenhouse gas emissions by 2035. And just last week, the United Nations released its climate report that basically said it's now or never to reduce greenhouse gases. And for those of you who've followed this long enough, they used to talk about inches of sea level rise. Now they're talking about feet, actually yards of sea level rise within maybe not my lifetime, but certainly the lifetime of my children and my grandchildren. And we need to prevent that from happening because much of this place, not Montgomery County, fortunately, so much, but any coastal areas in this country and around the world will become uninhabitable. And that's a catastrophe we cannot afford to face. We're taking a multi-pronged approach here, and we proposed and the council approved the Green Building Code. Now we need approval of the building energy performance standards. But without adopting the building energy performance standards, there is absolutely no way to achieve our greenhouse gas reductions. No one should be confused about this. If you do not change the built existing infrastructure, the way it's fueled and its lack of efficiency, there is no way to zero. No way to zero. We've got to acknowledge that. I'm pleased that the White House invited us to join their 33 inaugural states and local jurisdictions to be part of a building performance standards coalition. And additionally, we're deploying an integrated microgrid electric bus charging infrastructure that's going to enable at least 44 buses at the Ride-On Depot to transition from diesel to electric power while reducing lifetime emissions by over 155,000 tons. We are actually transitioning our entire county fleet to electric vehicles with some hydrogen vehicles. We're installing solar panels at county sites and pursuing innovative designs, concepts such as use of solar PV glass in order to preserve and improve resiliency within our public facilities. And we continue efforts to provide more charging stations and access to charging throughout the county. If you have an electric vehicle, you may have experienced range anxiety, and you may have seen a turtle appear on your dashboard. The turtle is like you can go 15 miles an hour and find the station in 1 mile. We need to have enough stations around the people who have the confidence if they buy an electric vehicle, they can charge the electric vehicle. So as I conclude my first term in office, there's one effort that I'm not going to accomplish within these 4 years, and that's shutting down our trash incinerator. Unfortunately, when I took office, I was greeted by the surprise that the life of the incinerator had been extended, which made it impossible for us to close it as we hoped. But fortunately, we're receiving proposals that will introduce new and innovative processes that'll better dispose of and recycle our waste. We recycle far less than we should, and other jurisdictions have passed us by. We are no longer on the cutting edge of these facilities. We're going to become a leader in this area, and we'll be shutting down this incinerator as soon as possible. We're in a position where we have no choice but to address climate change, COVID-19, economic disruption, affordable housing, and racial inequality simultaneously. So we've got to walk, chew gum, twirl a baton, spin plates on our head. We have to do all these things because these things are all intertwined with each other, and they require integrated strategies. They're going to cut across all sectors. Climate change may be an existential threat. Building and preserving affordable housing has been a problem now for decades. I used to be on the Tacoma Park City Council. We had rent stabilization. We had to declare that Montgomery County had a housing emergency every year in order to continue the rent stabilization program. So for those people who think we suddenly discovered this has been a problem going back to 1987 when I got on the city council. For years, the county's only solution has been to approve more housing, hope it gets built, and then expect that some small portion of these units will be affordable. The gap between what gets built and what we need is enormous and unchanging over many decades. Think about some of your employees. If they make under $75,000, they might be able to get an MPDU in Bethesda. But to get a market rate unit that costs between $2,500 and $3,000, $3,500 for a 1-bedroom, and $4,000 for a 2-bedroom, and there are no 3-bedrooms, forget the people with kids. That's the reality that many of our employees face and many people in the county face. The only affordable housing we ever get is what we require. And so if there's a shortage of affordable housing, it's the policies in this county that have helped create that shortage. For those who bemoan the lack of affordable housing, they need to look no farther than the policies which only drive a meager amount of affordable housing into our housing supply. For as long as we've had this problem, this has been our solution. And as you can guess, it hasn't worked and has only made the problem work. And quite frankly, it's been a questionable process that ignores the needs of the poor, the working class, all those on fixed incomes, and frankly, a lot of young, moderate income folks who don't make enough money for luxury and make too much money for MPDUs. I'm going to work with residents, homeowners, and taxpayers, and those who can't afford the cost of rent or to buy a home here. We're being innovative, holding them accountable, and finally making a dent into creating real affordable by a simple three-pronged approach. We're going to preserve, we're going to protect, we're going to produce. As the county grows, development pressures threaten our naturally occurring affordable housing stock. We need to protect tenants from displacement. No net loss is a requirement whose time has finally come. You cannot continue to lose housing. We have lost, many of you know Rob Goldman from Montgomery Housing Partnership. He told the council between 2010 and 2015, the county lost 35,000 housing units, affordable housing units, since 2000. They don't get lost. The rents get raised, they get knocked down and rebuilt with luxury housing. We have diminished our supply of housing, and we've been content to let that happen and just say, oh, well, that's the market. Last year, the county negotiated with Alpine View property owners. We were able to preserve access to affordable housing and expand affordable units and increase the number of deeply affordable units. Existing tenants will not just have the right to apply, we got them the right to return. And this is a big deal. When they get displaced and put in a temporary unit while new buildings are being built or new units are being built, they get to come back, not just apply. And there's a big difference, because if you apply and you got bad credit or your income isn't adequate, guess what? You don't get the unit. The right to return means if you live there and you're in good standing, you get to come back. It's a win-win for all of us, and we're working to replicate that success with other developers around the county. We're protecting current affordable housing through our Housing Affordability Opportunity Fund. This fund supports preservation of currently affordable housing by providing short-term loans, which allow developers to arrange long-term financing. So it's going to help a nonprofit take a property off the market that's for sale, hold it while they actually put the long-term financing in place. We've committed $14 million to the fund so far, and I think we're adding $6 million to it, and it's going to enable us with $20 million to leverage about $80 million of investment in affordable housing, and that is important. Scoot. With matching private funds, this will help us increase the acquisitions in the county. The purple line's a big concern, and this is a place where major displacement can occur, and we're looking to address that. The third leg of affordable housing is production. We had two recent success stories that I'm excited to announce. The first is plans for redevelopment of Bethesda of 3 full blocks that will line the east side of Wisconsin Avenue. This project includes 2 residential buildings with ownership opportunities, as well as affordable and deeply affordable housing. Deeply means down to people earning 30% of AMI, which is something nobody understands, so just say $30,000. And the levels we're getting exceed our current requirements. Along with that, we're getting the 2 parks in Bethesda that were in the master plan, and we negotiated public benefits that will be paid for by the developer and benefit residents through tax revenue, green space, and most importantly, more affordable housing in an area that badly needs it. This is significant good news for residents of Bethesda and Montgomery County. I want to thank the developers, the county transportation and housing departments, and the East Bethesda Citizens Association for all coming together to make this happen. I'm also quite excited about a second affordable housing project that I'm really pleased to announce today. We're working with HSA, with the community of Emery Grove, and I'm going to say Caroline Taylor, thank you very much, one of the longstanding residents. Emery Grove was settled by freed slaves in the late 1800s. It was the center of religion, one of the largest, oldest African-American Methodist camp meetings in the Mid-Atlantic. And its heart was, it was and continues to be the Emery Grove United Methodist Church. The original Emery Grove community encompassed about 300 acres. There were 100 homes with walking paths that connected neighbors. There was a community grocery store. There was the renowned Dewdrop Inn, which hosted people like Sam Cooke, Ike and Tina Turner, and James Brown. There was a Johnson's Field, home to Emery Grove's own all-black baseball team, and a place where many professional local Negro League teams played in the 1940s and the 1950s. I didn't even know about that. And then came this 1960s and urban renewal, which most of us think of as urban removal. Instead of investing in the infrastructure needed to support the community, the county chose to use public health as a means to shut down the camp meetings, and many residents of this vibrant, tight-knit community were displaced as more expensive housing was built and community institutions were lost. The county has a chance to right this wrong. Today, there are nearly 40 acres of redevelopment capacity under control of Emery Grove United Methodist, the Housing Opportunities Commission, the Parks Department, MCPS, and the county. Together, we're working to bring the project to fruition that will create affordable home ownership, affordable rentals for seniors, and a walkable, pedestrian-friendly, integrated village with opportunities for community-based cultural and retail components and significant historical planning. And I'm so pleased to be working with our partners as we reach out to the Emery Grove community to make sure we get this right. Again, Caroline Taylor, who's a fifth-generation resident and a native of Emery Grove, is here. She's the president of the historic Emery Grove Rotary Club and has been working with us on the project. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll continue to build on these successes. At my direction, the Department of General Services has created a webpage. You can go there now, offering 17 county-owned properties to developers willing to build affordable projects, including deeply affordable units. There's much that remains to be done to address the need for affordable housing, but I believe we're taking significant steps in the right direction. The big deal about using our property to do this is I don't have to buy it from somebody. I'm not carrying debt on it. I don't need to make a profit on it. And so if I need to subsidize affordable housing, just making it available helps bring down the price that developers would normally have to factor into building this housing. It's going to be, I think, a game changer for the county. Hopefully people will take us up on this. I've already had people approach us about several of the lots. I'd love to see deals for all 17 lots as soon as possible. I also want to acknowledge the important work of tenant organizing and education. We've funded groups that have worked to help our tenants have decent living conditions. So I want to thank the Renters Alliance, CASA, and Impact Silver Spring for their work in helping us get this all done. Malcolm X is quoted as saying, "The only way we'll get freedom for ourselves is to identify ourselves with every oppressed people in the world." Somebody else said, as long as one man isn't free, no man is free. It's a common theme, but we're all in this together. And we don't live in isolation, and tolerating things that are unjust in some other community makes us part and parcel of a larger human community that is not yet just. This is the essence of providing equity, and it's what it's all about. For far too long, this has not been a word or subject prioritized by government. But even before the pandemic or the rise of the interest in social justice following the death of George Floyd 2 years ago, this has been a priority of my administration. I was the first county executive to create a chief equity officer position, as well as an Office of Equity and Social Justice. And I couldn't be prouder of the work and growth of these efforts by our equity officer, Tiffany Ward. For the first time ever, the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice was involved throughout this budget process. Many of the decisions in this budget will positively impact communities most burdened by structural inequities. And to continue these efforts, I'm recommending that the office get additional staff. And as we move toward a more equitable future, we're also reconciling the past. This budget recommends funding to assist with community planning for a memorial to Black residents who were tortured and killed by lynch mobs in Montgomery County. Inequities were made all too clear during the pandemic, with communities of color and low-income families disproportionately impacted. To change this, we must build the capacity within county government to implement policies and programs throughout county government that address these inequities. When COVID hit, it didn't affect our health, it affected our business community and the employment picture throughout the world. At the height of the pandemic, the unemployment rate in Montgomery County reached 8.6%. Today, which is actually like 2 months ago, unemployment rate dropped to 3.9%, and it's a little bit lower now. It's more than a point lower than the statewide unemployment rate. This reflects the success in our small business community, who took on new burdens during this pandemic and responded and adapted and thrived, as well as the growth in our life sciences. This pandemic only heightened the need to focus on life sciences throughout our nation, and Montgomery County and our region have more PhDs than almost everywhere else in the country. Our lab space continues to grow and explode, and announcements are being made almost on a weekly basis. We recognize with this huge growth in life sciences, we have to grow our workforce and make sure it's certain that everyone in this county, regardless of their background in education, can work in this exciting field. I want to say that's why today I want to announce that we put together a grant to support the planning for a potential biomanufacturing and training facility right here in Silver Spring. If you know the old Caldor building, which was once the old Discovery building, not the big Discovery building, but the little Discovery building on East-West Highway, that's where the plan is. I serve on the steering committee of the Global Pandemic Center that is to be headquartered here. And this is something that everybody's looking for federal money from. We know there are going to be more pandemics. This is really depressing news, but it's just reality. Viruses mutate, and when they mutate, sometimes they go really bad. There are scientists that believe we can create a pandemic center and get ahead of the viruses, learn about the viruses now before they mutate into more lethal forms, so that it's easier and faster to develop both treatments and vaccines against those viruses. It's a smart decision to locate this here in Montgomery County because it's next to things like NIH and a huge private sector of life sciences company. We're prepared, and we're hoping that that will help become another game changer in our economy. It's been showing exponential growth over this year alone, over 3 million new square feet of lab space and related space in the county, with more expected. We've continually removed barriers to the growth of these businesses, and will continue to find ways to make our county even more hospitable to the growth of the life sciences, as well as other key industries. Life sciences are growing throughout the county, coming to North Bethesda, formerly White Flint, and at the metro station there. And last month, Stonebridge Development announced over 550,000 square feet of life sciences that would be built in this area. We haven't heard numbers like that in a really long time. Governor Hogan and our legislative partners secured $16 million for the development of the site. And as I said before, we continue to work with WMATA on a master developer. And I look forward to more announcements in the future. And you can go. Okay, I want to go back to I'll just talk about White Flint for a second, not White Oak for a second. We're not neglecting the east side of the county. I want to make that clear. So there are 3 major projects that we've been able to get unstuck that were stuck when I came here. First, the Gateway project at New Hampshire Avenue and the Beltway is moving forward. The Town Center project with a grocery store on Route 29 is moving forward. And Edens has finally made progress on a grocery store at the Burtonsville Shopping Center, which has been vacant and stagnant for a long time. It has been the site of... So we've got 3 projects that we've managed to get unstuck. The only project not unstuck is the large White Oak Viva. We have $40 million on our budget. We have not taken it out. For the day that they're ready to go forward with the project, we have the money to provide the infrastructure. It's sitting there and it's ready to go. Our hospitality sector continues to grow with both Choice Hotels and Marriott opening new headquarters in Montgomery County. It was good to see that Marriott's massive building is heated with electricity. On an environmental note, and it's really an incredible project, and I'm just very excited about the project It's progress, and they'll soon be opening the office component of that. And you can go up. I want to thank Department of Permitting Services, by the way. They've been a key part of getting things done faster. We've repeatedly gotten compliments from both Life Sciences and from Marriott and other people for the speed with which our department's been able to process applications and get them from the front door to the exit room. This is a big change for Montgomery County, so I want to thank all the folks in Permitting Services who make this happen. And of course, mass transit's a great equalizer. You know, we were cited as one of the major reasons that development is stagnant in much of the region is the lack of transportation. We laid out a bus rapid transit proposal. I laid it out more than a dozen years ago. And because of a lack of money, we haven't made much progress on it. But it's important that people have access to services and can get to jobs. And I'm really pleased that, you know, we opened our Route 29 flash bus rapid transit, but it's not really truly rapid transit when you're still stuck in traffic from New Hampshire Avenue to Silver Spring. We're looking to redesign it and address that problem. But despite all that, the flash ridership there has increased by 50% during the pandemic. These rides are reliable, consistent, bike-equipped, and are most have Wi-Fi. I'm thrilled that we're expanding bus rapid transit through our flash program throughout the county. And my capital budget proposal before the council includes funding for 2 more flash lines along Veers Mill Road and from Wheaton to Rockville and along 355 from Rockville to Germantown. And in addition, our legislative success, our delegation did an amazing job, and they brought us back over $60 million for the growth of BRT in the county, as well as a consistent sort of state investment in the future. In all, yes, that's worth acknowledging. In all the years of our working on this, I think this is the first time the state has actually stepped up and said, we're in the game with you. And so with the state recognizing the importance of this, the governor recognizing the importance for economic development, I looked at better days ahead when we work with the state and with the federal government to bring more resources to bear. We are going to lead the state and region in affordable, accessible, and reliable mass transit that's based on equitable and environmentally friendly approaches to bettering our county. So at the end of the day, the state of our county is about our people, and it's about all of you, your colleagues and residents who all serve with dedication and hard work. Man, I've lived in this county for more than 60 years. Frightening thought. I moved here as a 10-year-old in the winter of '59-60. I've watched it grow from a sleepy suburban bedroom community to an economic epicenter for our state and region. I've seen the early struggles of this county to deal with integration, but I saw a different path in Montgomery County than occurred in other jurisdictions around us. We chose a saner path toward integration than other people did, and it's paid off in a more equitable distribution of things in the county. That we're not where we need to be. We're certainly a long way from where we were. There were about 350,000 people when I lived here. Wheaton was a field. The strip of land behind my house, where I grew up, became the Beltway. There were foxes back there, and deer, but deer is a persistent problem. And only 3.5% of our population were people of color. Think how different that is today. We now have about 1.1 million residents. It's the first census we crossed 1 million. Only 43% of our residents are white, 32% of our residents are foreign born. We're one of the most diverse counties in this country. And we've managed diversity in ways that many people have failed. If you go to any of the multicultural events that bring lots of people together from all different backgrounds, you see people who, if they were back in the old worlds, would be fighting with each other. You see people here helping each other and working together and being part of this county. It is an amazing thing to see what could happen in frankly, this country that distinguishes this country from many other places around the world. And I just want to acknowledge that. Without our residents being willing to accept the diversity of this county, we could be like other places that fight it. We could be sending busloads of people from, say, Texas to DC, Or you could be saying, if you're here, we're here to help you, and we want to integrate you into this community. That's the Montgomery County that I loved. As a kid, I attended the March on Washington. I was a teenager. I don't think I was 12. And then continued marching and protesting for civil rights. I protested against the war. I was actively engaged in that. And I fought for environmental justice and women's equality. This is a county I always hoped it would be. I would not want to live anywhere else. I've traveled all over this country. There are cities I like and think are great. There is no place as complete, diverse, and capable as Montgomery County is. I would not pick another place to live. I would not pick another place to be. My family reflects this county's diversity, its progressive ideals, and its compassion and commitment to equality and inclusion. I'm proud of the way we embrace the diversity. It makes us stronger, and I'm proud of the work that's been done by everybody in this community to bring this community together. It's been my greatest honor and the best job I ever had to be your county executive, and especially at this critical time in our history. And because of our work together, because of the compassion and energy of our residents, because of the commitment and dedication that you all bring to your work, that is why the state of this county is strong. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you, all of you, our county residents, employees, businesses, and communities for your vigilance, your dedication, and your perseverance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, County Executive Eldridge, for sharing your thoughts about the state of our county at this time. It's incredible to hear all the amazing work that we are all doing to move this community forward. I want to take an opportunity again to say thank you for all of the work that you do each and every day. You heard it from the county executive. It's an aggressive agenda for the future. This is an amazing community. We are so fortunate to work here and to be able to help lead the community day in and day out. We will be, for those of you who are part of the Quarterly Leadership Forum, knock on wood, we'll be back here in Silver Spring in June for the next rotation. I want to give a special shout out to the Silver Spring team. Jacob Newman, Carson Henry, Eric Roush, Commander Dave McBain. Thank you so much for everything you do. And everyone, for those of you who recognize it, happy Passover, happy Easter, and enjoy happy Ramadan, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Have lunch in Silver Spring, and thank you so much.